from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We had some fireworks over the bye week. Not often can you celebrate some wins, but for George Paton and the Broncos organization, inking Tim Patrick to a 3-year extension, Courtland Sutton to a 4-year extension. And, there was a point where we'd been talking on Broncos Country Tonight that the Broncos had interest in maybe bringing one or the other. You had sort of mentioned at one point that maybe they might consider doing more than that. And here it is, George Paton saying we had every intention of always getting both of them. They got them both done. Why was it important to get done now?
Well, it continues with the philosophy of George Paton of making sure that you take care of your homegrown talent. And we talked about, obviously Courtland Sutton drafted here, has played here his whole Broncos career. Tim Patrick wasn't drafted here. He wasn't drafted at all. Bounced around a little bit, but landed here, and you grew him here. So I would argue that Tim Patrick is arguably homegrown talent just as much, if not more so, than Courtland Sutton. And, you get both these guys taken care of. The Broncos wide receiver core, for better or worse, is taken care of until the 2023 season. So, I think that that's one thing you can just kind of put to bed as you look to build the rest of this roster out in the way that you see that you need to get it done. And I think it's big to reaffirm that you take care of your own. They did with Justin. They did with Shelby. They picked up Von's option, even though they ended up trading him. They're taking care of their own under George Paton.
That was kind of interesting to think about the Broncos and what they've done offensively as far as bringing back their own guys. Last year, Garrett Bowles got a really nice contract, a 4-year extension. Prior to that, it was Jeff Hireman with a 2-year deal, Emmanuel Sanders with a 3-year deal. To be honest, they have not done very much as far as retaining their homegrown talent over the last several years. So now you could say, well, that's partly the talent that they had there. Certainly there were some moments with like Matt Paradis or Connor McGovern, and you could make the argument, okay, well, those guys are starting caliber players at their position, could retain them, but they just didn't. So it's amazing to think about how the Broncos, in George Paton's short tenure here, have already locked up 2, as they view it, homegrown offensive players last year with Garrett Bowles, because the fact is the Broncos really haven't been doing that very much on the offensive side of the ball. May have something to do with their inconsistency overall.
Well, they just haven't done it, period. They haven't drafted well. They haven't re-signed their own. They've mostly, John Elway's hallmark was combing the free agent wire and signing those kind of guys and finding undervalued guys, Emmanuel Sanders, and things like that. So, 2 different styles. I think this one plays better in the locker room, certainly, because a lot of players prior to George Paton taking over, the philosophy in that Broncos locker room was, well, I'll play my rookie deal out in Denver, ball out, and I'll get my paycheck somewhere else. And that's kind of been the philosophy. And now it's the other way around. Now it's, hey, they take care of us. Now you ball out here, they're going to pay you here. And I think that creates that family environment that this team's been lacking for a long time.
100%. And I think you could also add to, I love that you brought it up like that, a family environment. I think you can also add to, well, for the offense, who at this point we're probably wondering, okay, at what point is the coaching staff going to maybe change? They've been used to that. All of these players on this offense, anybody that's been here for the extended period of time has seen multiple OCs, multiple quarterbacks coaches, all those kinds of things changing all the time. And you get used to that. Well, we're probably going to be changing scheme here coming up again. But now maybe there is something about bringing something solid to the table. And I certainly think that this makes it for an attractive situation for next year, depending on what they decide to do at quarterback.
It just creates a better culture in the locker room, too, because you got people loyal to the brand, loyal to the city, versus a bunch of mercenaries that are always griping about what's going wrong, because that tends to be the way things happen with mercenary types. You bring in a bunch of free agents, they're going to gripe about all the places that they've been before. They're going to gripe about the current situation, and that's going to bring down the locker room. Everybody's just going to – so if you've got people that are loyal and creating a culture that, hey, this is the culture of the Denver Broncos, not this is my next stop in my pay tour, that tends to work out a lot better. You don't want to go to free agency. That's the thing. Like, people always lament being players in free agency, but the reality is you don't want to be a big player in free agency. You want to have the talent that you've already grown to not have to go to free agency. So
yeah, and the Broncos, for the most part, under George Paton, that was kind of the case. They did the Ronald Darby signing. Obviously, bringing back Kareem Jackson, but he was already a guy that was here. Mike Boone. I mean, we're talking about, other than the Ronald Darby deal, it was pretty low level across the board. It was mostly about retaining their same guys. And so George Paton obviously sees quite a bit of value in that, and he sees value in building up that kind of culture in the locker room. He talked about how, look at what Javonte Williams and Pat Surtain are going to see about me coming in here and signing these guys. And he's absolutely right, because we have had rookie classes coming in and seeing the next class that was 4 years prior on their way out the door, and you just get to know those guys who spent all 4 years developing here in your system, whether it's going to be with this coaching staff or not. So I think there's some pretty big implications and values there. But you get into the offseason, when you do eventually hit the offseason, and you're going to have a big decision to make at quarterbacks. Right now, you're in position at least to say the core of this team is our weapons, our offensive position players, and you got to build some on the offensive line. But certainly any quarterback that would be interested in playing for the Broncos is going to look at that first.
Yeah, there's a stability. You're not going to be hunting for new receivers. You're not going to have to pay new people. The offense is pretty taken care of, and that's a pretty attractive package if you're going out seeking a free agent quarterback or trading for a quarterback this offseason, which I feel like the Broncos are going to do. So, or at least pursue. So we'll see. But I can tell you that stability is something that veteran quarterbacks value. They understand the piecemeal nature, the comings and goings. If you got stability, you've got a programmable window. Hey, this is what we're doing. We got 4 years. Let's go out and do it.
But it's not even just the veteran quarterbacks, too, because you saw with the Chargers, for example, they brought in Justin Herbert. Well, they had a vet receiving group around him. They had vet running backs. They had vet everything around him. When he came in, he was kind of the missing piece that sort of took them over the top. It's not to say that you couldn't consider still taking a young quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I think that's the fallback option, but I think you could. But having a ready-made offense will certainly help a young quarterbacks develop. But I think the primary objective is to chase after a veteran.
Well, acquiring the picks that you have and sort of positioning yourself, plus where your salary cap situation is, you have a couple more important deals to get done, whether that's the end of this year or into next year. But for the most part, you kind of took care of quite a few question marks. And again, you set yourself up for future success. So I think that there's some exciting things about the now, about what these two guys inked will mean for the locker room as they finish out these final 7 games. And I think there's some exciting things for the future, too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing where they go from here.
All right. On the next episode, we will break down the upcoming opponent, the Los Angeles Chargers. Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.